Happy Thursday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple here with Husker Online as we go through what we feel are the five biggest headlines. Nebraska coming off a win last week, Sip, over Northern Illinois. Now this week, Louisiana Tech comes into town. Lots to talk about here on Headlines. Let's get into it. Headline number one, what will this offense look like here? Knowing some of the situations that have happened, but most importantly, the quarterback situation. I just think in general, lots of questions on what this offense looks like, how they build this offense now going forward.
Well, it depends who the quarterback is, but I thought if it was Harburg, they would run the quarterback more, which they did last week.
12 called design runs.
Yeah, which I guess was, now that you say that, when you put it that way, it was about the same as Sims, but it's not going to be less than when Sims is a quarterback. They're going to run Heinrich. You got to run Heinrich, especially with the running back injuries that they have to Gabe Ervin and Ramir Johnson. You got to run that position more. I don't think the offense is going to look all that much different, except you have to run the quarterback more.
I think the biggest thing too now, the adjustments made. I mean, now that Harburg has a tape out there,
yeah.
How will they adjust? I mean, and you saw Matt Rule say that this week, that Northern Illinois came out completely different than what they had shown because they had anticipated Harburg being the starter. So they played a much more upfield, aggressive style on him to take away the run game. And I think a lot of teams are going to do that now. I think you want these quarterbacks to get some runs, but I think opposing coordinators are going to put in looks that make it harder for that QB run game to be a factor.
Well, that's where his versatility could come in because he can throw it downfield too. They could be in a good situation here if the picture that Harburg presented is real. They could be in a pretty good spot with him, but you have to see it over the course of time. We've seen one game, and it was a good picture. It was a good picture, but now I'm wildly interested in what that picture is going to look like tomorrow.
This offense, so I think when you look at what they have to do, they've got to figure out something that helps their defense. This team is going to win because of that defense, and ideally special teams play. If it's the punts are like we saw last week, they've got to find a complementary offense to help that defense. And I use this week on the site. 2009 Nebraska. Sean Watson one time said, in the middle of that year, he's like, we just kind of had to lay all of our pieces on the table. This is what we have to work with. Let's figure out the best way to win, knowing that we've got a really good defense to help us on the other end. And I think that's the same spot that Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield are in right now. They know they've got a good defense. They've just got to not screw this up. You hate to even use Iowa as an example, but the way Iowa plays, they don't beat themselves.
No.
And sometimes for Iowa, a punt is a victory. Mm-hmm. And we saw that last week where it was kind of a stalemate, 7-3 for a long time. But then they just eventually got the play they needed on special teams, which led to points on offense.
Yeah, there's a fine line. You don't want to go into a shell as an offense. This already, I don't know exactly where you're coming from, but if I hear it right, it's you want to be a little more conservative.
You want to play sound and smart football.
Sound and smart, but you don't want to send a message to these guys that we're going to play conservative because they're already they don't have a whole lot.
2 tight ends, fullback. I mean, they play a pretty old school.
What I'm saying is you don't want to preach conservatism too much to an offense that doesn't even have that many playmakers. The playmakers they have to turn it loose. All right. So it's tricky, but that's coaching. Yeah. You don't want to go. I mean, you got to keep it conservative. I get it, but I just don't want to. I don't think the message should be that all the time.
I don't think they want to throw it much more than 25 times a game, though. No, I think 20 to 25 is probably the number.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just, so what's the offense going to look like? It's a big discussion. It is a huge discussion now without Ramir Johnson and Gabe Ervin.
Well, and can
they even keep doing what they want to do, which is, Sean, the question in my mind, if I sat next to Matt Rule at a bar, if we were at O'Rourke's tonight, I would want to ask him this. Now, you, Matt, have really laid out in clear terms how you want to win games. what is it, Sean? Body blows with the running game. Really take that running game into the fourth quarter and be particularly effective late in the game. Body blows. And then you can lean on your defense as you go. Get good special teams plays. Now, the question, can you still do that with Emmett Johnson and Quint Ives?
And we'll hit on those guys later on our other headlines. But, you're right.
Still do that.
Well, how much can you push Anthony Grant, too?
Right.
Because you saw last year, he went 32 carries against Indiana. And then on a short week, had to go out to Rutgers and play. And didn't do much. Took a lot of hit. I mean, the offensive line got whipped at Rutgers. I mean, Nebraska won that game, but they probably easily could have lost.
Yep.
And Grant had a rough game. He got hit a lot. He never was really the same after that Rutgers game.
Other
than the Minnesota game. He had a good game against Minnesota.
I thought his legs came back at times late last season, but right around that time of the Rutgers game after that, it was evident that he had kind of lost his zip. So you got to definitely watch that. I feel really comfortable with Anthony Grant, but how much are you going to use him? I think the answer to all of this is they're going to run the quarterbacks. You're going to probably use two, right? Because both of them can run. What's it going to look like, Sean?
I'm not in the camp. People are like, "Are you going to involve the fullback more?" No, I don't think the fullback is going to get like a lot of carries. Like,
why did you say it like that?
I'm just trying to be like general fan on the street. Ask there's like some people even ask, would Janira and Bonner have a chance to play some?
That's my voice.
No,
I wondered.
I don't think so. I mean,
you're mocking.
He just moved from receiver to a tight end. And he's kind of a fullback at times.
Play some fullback,
but I don't see him as a guy that can do like a one cut, like a true tailback move.
I understand that.
I just don't.
Now hold on. Some quick hitting handoffs to Liebentritt. That doesn't appeal to you.
I mean, he's not Andy Janovich though. Like,
no.
If they had Andy Janovich, absolutely. And we saw Mike Riley do that with Andy Janovich. They included him.
Not Makovica.
Was it Mike Riley's first year when Janovich had that run against Wisconsin?
I don't know what year that
and they took the lead. Yeah, it was the first year of Riley, and they took the lead. And then
I just know the crowd just about lost its mind.
It was like the best fullback run we saw in like 20 years. But I don't know if they have that. But
you don't know. Here's the thing: you don't know that they don't. You don't know if they don't.
Do they rep it? I mean, how many reps does the fullback even get carrying the ball
in practice?
Like,
I don't know.
Can you even waste time doing that if it's not going to be a part of your repertoire?
Okay. It can become part of your repertoire. Your repertoire can change. What I'd like to see more of is quick hitting runs, not always read runs, just quick hitters. Boom. Yeah, he's at the line of scrimmage. All right. I'd like to see that.
You know what play was beautiful? Like in the Abdullah, and they don't have Amir Abdullah. I'm going to be in Rex Burkhead era. They would just run like that, like power toss.
Yeah.
And they beat Penn State that one year. I'm trying to think what year that would have been. 2012.
Yeah.
And I think they ran the same run play 38 times, just some crazy number.
Quick power toss, toss.
But then they had a fullback lead blocking, and it was CJ Zimmer. And Penn State just got tired. I mean, they were really a good team, and Amir just kept beating them to the edge. And they ran the same play. Like
those are body blows
the entire game.
Yeah, those are body blows.
I'm sure Matt Rule, being a Penn State guy, he's probably watched that tape before.
Yeah,
but that was like. And Barney Cotton and Ron Brown, I remember we just kept running the same play the entire game.
Yep.
And Penn State couldn't stop it. But all right, before we get to headline number 2, this headline, the show brought to you by CHI Health. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. This year, it is estimated that over 288,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and over 34,000 men will die from the disease. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and I want to remind you to talk to your healthcare provider about when to begin your cancer screenings. Men at age 50 and older should talk with their healthcare provider about when they should begin their prostate cancer screenings. Finding prostate cancer early makes it easier. If you don't have a provider, visit chihealth.com to find a provider and a CHI Health clinic near you. And I got to just give them one plug, because on Sunday nights, CHI bailed me out. My daughter had an accident. We were cutting a caramel apple, and she cut her finger. And we went into priority care at CHI Sunday night, 7:30.
Yeah.
Got her in and out of there in 20 minutes.
Ooh, really? Just put some glue on there?
Glue, yeah. It was going to be stitches or glue. Drove over to 40th and Yankee Hill, and walked right in. They had our stuff in there. Boom, we were in and out. So, and I know Sunday nights are tough. Like to be able to get seen, that was a really nice thing. And CHI bailed us out on a Sunday night. Otherwise, you got to go to the ER or somewhere, So check out CHI Health. Thank you for being a sponsor here of the Husker Online show and Husker Online headlines. All right, let's get on headline number 2. Are we going to see the rise of Heinrich Haarberg or the comeback of Jeff Sims? I think it's a valid question this week. When you go into this game, we kind of saw Haarberg, and everyone wants a little bit more of Haarberg. We didn't see Jeff Sims at all because of the injury. Will that lead him back? I mean, who will start? I mean, I think it's really debatable. Matt Rule has not said, and he's been pretty consistent with this, that it will be a game time decision on what he's going to do. But you just get the sense or feeling it probably will be Haarberg, but who knows?
Yeah, Matt Rule did say today, which is Thursday, he said late this morning, that Sims practiced well, but isn't 100%. I think he tipped his hand a little bit there, unless it's subterfuge. Maybe he said that to throw Louisiana Tech off. Oh, he's saying that Sims isn't moving that well. If you're that defensive coordinator at Louisiana Tech, you might say, "Oh, that means Sims is starting." I don't know. You can get into some mind games here.
I'd be curious, just to be a fly on the wall at Louisiana Tech. Who would they rather
That's
see?
a good question. Because you should think of it that way.
Like, would they be like, I hope they start Sims because we think Haarberg's better? I mean, like,
or would it be the opposite?
Like, what would their thought be preparing? And the other question I have is, how different is Nebraska? I don't know if they're that much different. Now, this week they are going to be different because of the running back situation. But what will it look like? The biggest difference is the turnovers. A Jeff Sims-led offense was 4 turnovers a game. Haarberg had the 1, and the defense helped him out and held him to a field goal to get him out of that tough hole.
You just said something really smart for a change. That you maybe would guide your decision on if you were a defensive coordinator, which guy would you rather face? Now, all things equal, but things aren't all equal because of Sims' injury. But if all things are equal, you got to put yourself in the shoes of a defensive coordinator. Sean, who would you rather face right now?
Sims.
I would too. Because of turnovers.
Well, I think the pressure that he's under, like I think the rise of Haarberg has added more pressure.
Can we call it a rise after one game against a suspect?
The performance of Haarberg.
Yeah.
I think, though, the clean game he played puts a hell of a lot of pressure on Jeff Sims to answer that.
Oh, yeah.
Because before there was no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He had nobody on his heels. He could make a mistake and not really worry about it because the other quarterbacks probably weren't repped at a level to unseat him.
Sean, you know what could happen? Maybe Sims welcomes that pressure. Maybe he's the type of guy that responds really well to it. Maybe it's possible that that's exactly what he needed.
Well, and the pressure that he was under here, come on, Georgia Tech.
No, he wasn't under.
There was no pressure at Georgia Tech.
Hold on. How much pressure was he under here? He
got
handed the starting job.
I'm saying to meet an expectation with all this NIL and advertisements. That's what I'm talking about. Like, he's got his own combo meal, a suit deal, a tractor deal, a big contract with the collective.
He wasn't being pushed.
And you go back to Georgia, he probably had none of that at Georgia Tech, at least to a high level. Otherwise, he'd still be there.
Okay, but he wasn't being pushed in practice on a daily basis that we know of.
No.
It was his job. Now it's not necessarily his job, and maybe, just maybe, that's how he'll respond really well to that. Like, maybe you'd almost see a new Jeff Sims.
Like a fire.
Yeah, because you didn't see fire. That was the intangible part that really, I guess, concerned me or sort of turned me off about Sims. I didn't see a lot of fire. Now, Satterfield, I think, would take me on that and say, "Oh, wait, you didn't see those runs against Minnesota where he lowered his shoulder into defenders? You didn't think that fired Satterfield up? That probably fired teammates up." But I just thought I thought Harburg's presence and overall command and these intangible qualities that we talk about that are so important at the quarterback position, command, presence, leadership, all of that, I thought looked better with Harburg.
The lack of situational awareness too. I mean, that's hard to look past because of the experience that Sims had.
Oh yeah.
I mean, throwing those picks at Minnesota, because it's like that they could go to overtime and still win the game, and that pick cost them the game.
Well, going out of bounds at Colorado too. Going out of bounds at the end of the first half,
which allowed Colorado to get more points.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's just situational plays, or even like trying to pick up a fumble and still make a play. Just jump on the ball.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, 100, Sean.
So that's and you can't say he's not experienced. He's got as many starts as any Power 5 quarterback in the conference right now.
Uh-huh.
It's not like he's some rookie that they just brought up. I mean,
so I would say we might be witnessing the rise of Heinrich Harburg. I'd say if he can duplicate or put forth a performance that is on the level of Northern Illinois or exceeds it, then I think you can put the word rise in there. Or maybe we are witnessing the rise of something. I kind of lean towards Heinrich because he captured our imaginations, right? He captured our imaginations.
Now, and Husker fans are always thinking about the next move. There's so many people asking, do you think we'll go in the portal again for another quarterback? And I go, it's just too early. You don't know. And I mean, there's even fans that want to know if Anthony Rizak could get offered. Well, they already have Daniel Kalin, and generally you don't take 2 high school scholarship quarterbacks. Right. So I think we're way too early to know the portal thing.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to take another high school quarterback because they're full. I mean, they have 25 commits already.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time before they eliminated the rule of 25 that they'd be done. They couldn't even take portal players. So Matt Rule has basically let it be known they're going to add probably 30 plus players again to this roster next year and continue to churn.
Interesting.
And that will be something to kind of follow. All right. Before we get to headline number 3, this segment and headline brought to you by Bauer Underground. Bauer Underground is helping shape Nebraska's infrastructure future and is looking for new members to join the team with open positions for laborers, equipment operators, aerial linemen, and foremen. Bauer Underground is searching for the best in construction. Visit BauerUnderground.com to learn more about career opportunities and industry-leading benefits, including competitive pay, employer-paid health insurance, dental, disability, vision, and life insurance, 401k match, new top-of-the-line equipment, and a clothing allowance. No experience in utility underground construction? No problem. Bauer will train the right people in the field, giving you the hands-on experience that you need to build a long and rewarding career. Want to learn more? Visit Bauer Underground on Facebook to view testimonials from current Bauer teammates, hear about their experiences, the company culture, and the importance of their work. Bauer Underground is family-owned with crews and work sites across Nebraska. Wherever you live, Bauer has an opportunity for you. For more information, like Bauer Underground on Facebook or visit BauerUnderground.com. Come start your new career today. Let's take it to headline number 3. The good news, the bad news for this Nebraska defense. First of all, I think a lot of good news, Steve Sipple. They played 35 guys.
Yeah.
27 guys saw more than 10 snaps in the game.
Wow.
So it's a remarkable number of guys. Having some trouble over there, big guy?
Just the microphone almost fell down.
Fumbling the ball there before the snap.
I jumped on it. No, Sean, I jumped right on it.
You tried to pick it up and keep going.
I jumped on it. Yeah, good news, bad news. I mean, the good news is, as you mentioned, 35 guys that's a beautiful number that they play.
Well, especially in a game that was fairly tight for 3 quarters.
So you said 27
played more than 10 snaps.
More than 10 snaps. That's excellent. Also good news. Nebraska allowing, and we have to celebrate these stats to a certain extent because we haven't had a chance to do a lot of this in the recent years. Nebraska 4th in the nation right now in average rushing yards allowed per 1.74. Okay, that's the number. 1.74 per carry. 4th in the country, Sean. James Madison is number 1. Who knew? opponents are only averaging 0.77 yards per carry against James Madison. Air Force number 2, 1.62 yards per carry by opponents. Arkansas 3, 1.72. Nebraska 4. Now that's a number you can say, well, these opponents aren't great rushing teams. Well, Minnesota hangs its hat on it, or they have in recent years. Colorado does not. Northern Illinois would have liked to run better. They
didn't want. They sure as heck didn't want Lombardi throwing a ton.
Right. So no, that is an excellent number. The bad news is they've only forced 3 turnovers. Now that part will come, I think, because they hit. They get a lot of guys to the ball, does Nebraska, and they hit hard. This is a very strong tackling team. It is. Talked to George Darlington about that this week. George, come on, he's got 3 national title rings. He coached defensive backs for the best defenses that Nebraska's ever had. He knows what it takes to play defense and to force turnovers. He says this is what he said, Sean. This is an extremely good tackling team. Now, when George says it, I listen because George knows football, but also because you know what else George does? He'll be the first to criticize a bad situation.
There's a lot of things he's told you over the years you could never publish.
No, he will. He's
unfiltered.
He's unfiltered and very honest. And he says extremely good tackling team here. Extremely good.
George is a beauty.
Yeah, he's smart. He's very intelligent.
He'll tell you how it is.
Yeah, yeah. And anybody who's sat with him in the press box, including yourself, he sees things way before anybody does.
When he doesn't care, he's uncancelable at his age. Like he'll say what he wants to say. He doesn't care. Like,
but he's not inappropriate.
No. But he's blunt.
He's blunt about he has just said you can't win with Jeff Sims. He said that's his opinion. I said, George, that's just your opinion. That's your opinion. And now he said that after the opener, by the way.
And Coach Rule will talk to George.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those guys can be blunt with each other.
They appreciate, like him and Ed Foley, they appreciate George just
unfiltered. He's very opinionated, but he's right about most things.
Osborne had some, when you think about that staff now, think about Milt and George and Charlie. There were some personalities there.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, it's not like they always got along.
No,
Sean, they did not always get along. 100%. That's not, I wouldn't go on a show and say that if I didn't know it.
Have you seen Coach McBride or heard? I haven't heard
from him in a long time.
I wonder how he's doing, because I haven't seen him around or heard much from Coach. And, obviously he's a legend in the program too, but it's good to see George back around.
George is at pretty much every game, and he's at a lot of practices. And he told me, Sean, he quit going he would only go to a few practices of the previous head coaches because he said it was terrible. I'm just telling you
Scott Frost, right?
Yeah, he said it was terrible. And he loved. Well, I'll read you why don't we just do this? I'll read you a quote because I was using this in a speech. This is what George said about Matt Rule. He'll get it done here. I really believe that. If you hear any crap about him or hear, well, I don't know about this guy, just know I'm on his bandwagon, because with so many head coaches here, I'd go to one practice and see it was crap. Excuse my French, but I didn't want to waste my time. What he likes is that they tackle in practice. They scrimmage. That they will scrimmage during the week. They'll just have a period where they scrimmage. They'll go at it. He loves that, and he loves that they got all the guys practicing. Those are the things he really likes.
On the Tuesday, Wednesday, they're back to being kind of an old school. Before, I think between Riley and Frost, there was kind of this mentality to really be careful in practice,
right?
Which didn't give you a good look for the week.
Sean, you that's a good way to put it. Rule, I would say, is less careful in the way he approaches the hitting part. He's not that he's reckless, but he's just less careful.
Well, can you imagine the Penn State he played for in the 90s, what those practices were probably like?
And Nebraska in the 90s.
Well, and they had great depth on those Penn State teams. They could go hard.
Yeah, and it was a different time. You got to allow for that. But like Nebraska in the 90s, Tom would let us watch practice, Sean. And I would tell you this. We'd be in the ladder, the media would be in for the latter stages of practice. And sometimes we would catch their goal line drill, which was live. And that was as much violence as I'd want to see. I mean, I would back off the field because it was a very violent drill. I mean, it was a goal line drill, and it was Lawrence Phillips trying to get in the touchdown again in the end zone against Wistrom and Peter and Ogard and whoever else, I mean, it was amazing.
And it goes back to the notion that, hey, you want your practices to be harder than the game.
And it was.
All right. Before we get to headline number 3, headline number 4, this headline is brought to you by Underdog. Even though we are a college football podcast, I'm going to guess a lot of you are NFL fans as well. And as you know, NFL is officially back. A lot of your Saturdays or Sundays, are probably now filled with watching games. And a big part of watching those games is fantasy football. That's why we've partnered with Underdog Fantasy for this football season. It's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy has a lot to offer, including their Pick'em game. In Pick'em, you can pick whether your favorite player will have a higher or lower stat total in the week's game for a chance to win big. It's easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 of stats from your favorite players and choose whether they'll go over or under. You say, like you're watching the Bengals, and you say Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, others higher or lower in their certain categories. By the way, if you're Burrow, it's probably been under. They haven't put up big. It's been a rough start for the Bengals here. But you can go 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. Sign up with promo code Husker to get your first $100 deposited doubled. Visit underdogfantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with the promo code Husker to get your first deposit of up to $100 doubled. So they'll give you $100 if you put $100 in. You must be 18 and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Thanks again to Underdog Fantasy, proud sponsor here of Husker Online Headlines. All right, headline number 4. Quint Ives and Emmett Johnson will thrust into the spotlight. Couple young guys we've not seen play at all, Steve Sipple. We know Anthony Grant's going to play a factor, but pretty good chance we're going to get a good look at least one of these two backs.
Yeah. And can they do what's being asked of them? I mean, hammer between the tackles, be heavily involved in a downhill run game. Are those guys ready for that mentally, physically, and emotionally? Because it takes a toll. It's not easy to do. And now it's a little easier to do against Louisiana Tech. It's, you know what, Sean? You know what? If I'm a coach, you have Michigan in the back of your mind, right? Okay, everybody does. Sean, are these guys ready for Michigan? Trying to ascertain that. We're trying to ascertain that tomorrow. Is Emmett Johnson, Quint Ives, 6'2", 185. Maybe a little bigger than that now. That's what he's listed. Emmett Johnson, he's Ramir Johnson's size, probably 5'11", 185, 190. Are they ready for this?
Well, running back is a position where you should know as a freshman. And for 20 plus years, every good running back at Nebraska had a role as a freshman where you at least knew they were good players. And you can go down the line of every one of them that kind of played early. Amon Green, Calvin Jones, but Lawrence Phillips. Then after that era,
but Amir didn't play a lot as a freshman.
Enough. He flashed enough.
Is that when they had Braylon Hurd
and
they had, who else did they have?
Aaron Green.
Oh, Aaron Green.
So they had in one recruiting class, they had the TCU eventual starting running back Aaron Green, the Kentucky starting running back Braylon Hurd, and Amir Abdullah.
Yeah, Amir being by far the best one.
So they had 3 Power 5 backs, and the 2 left right away because Amir was that good.
Yeah, that good.
I mean, Brandon Jackson, when he came in as a freshman, you knew he was good. Corey Ross showed potential right off the bat when he was.
Well, yeah, he took a while for Corey. Sean, took a while for
but
Quint.
he had some wiggle to him. You saw like as a returner, and
yeah, it took a while though.
David Horn. I mean, he ended up not finishing well, but did really well.
No,
I mean, it's rare though. A running back that's good needs to redshirt. Like usually, if you're good, you can help.
This situation might be a little different than some because the veterans that were in that room. I mean, you had Ramir Johnson, who's a junior, 5th-year junior. And of course you had Gabe Irvin, veteran guys. Now you've lost 2 of them. And you have Anthony Grant, who's a 24-year-old. So maybe what I'm suggesting, Sean, is maybe Ives and Emmett were in a situation where you didn't really need them. Now you do. And again, are they ready for this? You feel better that they're getting tested against Louisiana Tech. Nothing against Louisiana Tech, but they've given up 450 plus yards in all 4 games. And North Texas just put 562 on them. Okay. The world's going to change for these guys drastically next week against Michigan. But let's see what they got and go from there.
Yeah, Ives is a really interesting study because he was not highly recruited. I mean, this is your quintessential Evan Cooper, Matt Rule type recruit, a guy that they bet on and they believed in, didn't have any other Power 5 offers.
Okay.
And they went on him right away. I mean, that little 2-week period where, they were traveling the world, taking recruits everywhere. That was a guy they took and they found. And, I think UConn was going to be an option for him with Barthel involved. So Barthel was recruiting him too before, but he was not by any means a highly recruited running back, but they hadn't really been recruiting great running backs here anyway at Nebraska in the previous. I mean,
it's a interesting discussion because of what they're going to ask of these guys. I mean, they're going to ask them to run between the tackles, to be heavily involved in a power running game. I mean, this is a lot. It's a lot. You just got to see. I mean, I'm not ruling out that Quentin Ives and or Emmett Johnson, I'm not ruling out that they'll look fabulous.
Ives is big too.
Pretty big. They list him at 185.
He's 6'2" though.
Yeah. Now what Rule says your typical kind of downhill eye back, a guy that you'd see dot the eye in an old Nebraska offense. That's why I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah. And Emmett Johnson was the Minnesota High School Player of the Year. And, his recruiting as a junior was kind of sidetracked because of COVID. I mean, Minnesota was one of those states that didn't play high school football until really, really late in the year. Mm-hmm. And then they only played a few games. Mm-hmm. So he had no junior film to help him. And it hurt him. I mean, how do you get recruit? Because it's hard to be a good sophomore high school football player.
Right.
I mean, you got to be really elite.
Yeah.
And then his junior year got tanked because of the COVID deal in Minnesota. And then his senior year, he was Player of the Year. So this is kind of a guy they took a chance on. And they just needed a back. And
if you're a Nebraska fan, you hope you're walking out of the stadium on Saturday going, whoa, they had those 2 young guys
just sitting there.
Wow. That's what you're hoping.
You hope it's like another version of Harburg last week, or like another Harburg storyline emerges.
Exactly. Where old guys like me are walking out going, man,
they might have
know it was going to look like that. I mean, Sean, I didn't know Harburg would look like that. I didn't know that. I'm not going to pretend like I expected what I saw. No, Harburg way exceeded my expectations. And that's what you hope with the running backs.
Now, the weather could be an issue. I mean, we don't know. And I don't want to be like an iPhone meteorologist here. I mean, I think we all are. Like, you just you wake up in the morning, you look at your phone, you're like, oh, it's going to rain. Like we've just come to think that this little dot on our iPhone is the end all be all.
Yeah, I do that.
And it's not even right a lot of the time. Right. But anyway, what's it going to be like? The weather for young guys in their first action, that will be something to watch.
Yeah, there's a 40% chance of afternoon thunder showers.
Is that from your iPhone?
No, that's from the radio. I heard it on the radio show.
Gary Saddlemeyer had a great line on KFIB this week that Lyle Bremser was talking to Gary when he was a young broadcaster, and he said, "Hey, Gary, just so you know, when you say anything but the time and the temperature, it's going to be controversial on the radio." So just know that. The weather is, we don't know. I mean, it could be rainy. I think a lot of us have fear of the Akron game in 2018, something like that all over again. I can't imagine that ever happening. That's the only time, other than like a World War I, World War II type thing, that a game has been canceled at Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
No, I think Trev and his people will be on top of any situation, unlike the Bill Moose was that night.
Yeah, Moose
Akron.
wasn't one of Moose's better days.
They couldn't find him.
Easy.
All right.
Next subject.
Final headline. Headline number 5. We will learn plenty about Big Ten West this weekend. Iowa plays Penn State. That's a big one. Ohio State plays at Notre Dame. Rutgers is at Michigan. There's a number of matchups that we're going to see and learn a lot about in
Minnesota Northwestern.
And how will Northwestern come back? How will Minnesota bounce back?
Wisconsin Purdue is the one that will tell us a lot. That's Friday. Friday at 6
Because both teams have had their ups. I mean, you would expect Wisconsin to win that game, but
they're a 6-point favorite for those who partake in that sort of thing. Wisconsin's a 6-point favorite on the road at Purdue. I don't know what to make of that. It's a hard one. Wisconsin, I think, maybe started to turn the corner a little bit, if there was a corner to turn in the second half against Georgia Southern, keeping in mind that Georgia Southern turned the ball over 6 times in that game. But what I saw was Wisconsin getting Braylon Allen and Ches Maluzzi loose a little bit. They look good. Both those guys look good. Wisconsin's offensive line is not even close to vintage. Like, it's not what probably they want at all.
It's kind of why the coaching change was made.
It's okay. It's fine. But I don't know what to make of Purdue. They lost by 15 to Syracuse last week.
In West Lafayette.
Yeah, new coach, Ryan Walters. They have 2 losses already. But I guess what we're telling you is this. That game will tell you quite a bit about the West, I think. Now, Iowa, if Iowa could change the way we look at the West completely if they go to Happy Valley and win.
If they win that game, which they're 15-point dogs,
right.
I mean, you could say they've clinched the division at that point. How bizarre!
I'm not going to say that.
That story with Brian Ferentz and the 325 thing, like, to me, it's wacky. I mean, you got a team that's ranked 24th in the country, that's 3-0, and they've made this thing about the points per game average, like such a story. Like,
it's a huge story.
Like, who puts that in writing?
I don't know. It's not a good move.
I mean,
not a good move.
What if they're like 10-2 and they don't get the point? What I mean,
fire him.
Like, come on.
Right.
Like,
anyway, that's a huge game. You say they're a 15-point dog. It'll be a whiteout. It's a night game.
It's on CBS.
Yeah. I think Penn State might
wash
sprint off with it.
Well, especially, I mean, I know the quarterback McNamara has been nicked up a little bit. Like, they get after him.
Well, and Iowa's tight end is out. They have 3 key injuries, including Lachey, who, if you remember the Nebraska game last year in Iowa City, was excellent. So I don't think I think Penn State might hammer.
Ohio State 3-point favorite at Notre Dame. That has my attention. I mean, there's going to be a boatload of people watching that. I mean, those two
biggest game of the weekend.
Those 2 Big Ten games are CBS, NBC, head to head. They're going to be squaring off against each other.
It's a big game. It's the biggest game of a weekend, which you could debate, by the way, because Florida State plays at Clemson, and Colorado is at Oregon. Those are big games.
Yeah, that's a 2:30 game in Oregon, right?
I don't know that.
2:30 Central.
I don't follow the Buffs, but those are big games, and those aren't the only ones. There's 2 or 3 other pretty big games out there that we didn't mention.
And then the next week, Nebraska will be 2:30 for Michigan. Colorado took the big noon spot from Nebraska, Michigan, and they'll be big noon against USC.
Yeah.
So 5 of the first 6 weeks, big noon kickoff show will be in Boulder. This week, I kind of chuckled. Big noon kickoff. Do you know where they're at this week?
No.
Oklahoma at Cincinnati.
Why?
Like, exactly. Like, that's what I'm saying to my, I guess they try to be at the game they're going to air at 11 or, but last week they weren't. They did the Colorado game, but you have like The Rock and Lil Wayne and all these people on your pregame show. Then you're going to be at Oklahoma at Cincinnati.
Oh.
I mean, just talk about like the ultimate like buzzkill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like your engine ran out.
They won't now. Nobody's going to be in Colorado, Oregon this week. They're giving, as far as like the pregame shows. Game day is at Oregon or at Ohio State, Notre Dame. Big noon kickoff is at Oklahoma, Cincinnati.
So Oklahoma, I will say this about Oklahoma. I've heard people saying that they're going to make a strong rebound from last year, that they're flexing right now. And they have looked good so far.
And like that Red River shootout game, that will be big noon kickoff, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember what happened last year in that game? Texas 49, Oklahoma zip. Okay. That was crazy. I think it was 49 zip. It might have been 47. It was 40 something zip. But I think Oklahoma is in the midst of a strong rebound. I'd watch that.
Speaking of Oklahoma, did you see the story with Lincoln Riley and the reporter at USC?
I've only heard about. What was the deal?
So Lincoln Riley runs a strict media ship, and he has policies and they didn't like what this reporter wrote, how he wrote some things
or did he interview somebody away from
he did a few things. Like I think he reached out to a parent.
Okay.
He wrote like mop up duty in an article,
mop up duty got Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. Like 3 or 4 things that he said or did. And they put this reporter on a 2-week suspension, which I just think you're ranked like in the top 10, top 5. Like, why are you worried about a reporter if you're Lincoln Riley? He's making $10 million a year and he's worried about.
Well, Sean, I don't want to judge it because I don't know all the details.
Bill Platsky just teed off.
Did he?
As you would imagine.
Yeah. I saw that. I need to read it. I saw it on our message board. I haven't read it. I need to get into that.
Now, I was banned by Bo Pelini for 1 week, and it was over basically calling Peter Gammons to get confirmation on a Bubba Star. I still don't understand what triggered him about doing that.
I can't.
Coaches get weird like that, though.
Pressure.
You've never been banned. You've had some close.
I've had some close calls.
Brush ups.
Yeah. Frank threatened to ban me one time, but no.
He threatened to ban you?
Yeah.
In the Osborne era, it wasn't like that, right? I mean, I'm sure Osborne didn't like some things that writers would write, but it wasn't like he banned people.
Well, they were winning at such a high level. There wasn't no, Tom just wasn't, forget it. Tom had a lot of controversy.
But Lawrence Phillips era.
There was never episodes with the media because I think Tom handled things so well. He just handled things really well. He wasn't given to temper tantrums. He wasn't given to rash decisions. His decisions usually were sound. So there wasn't a lot of media problems. Sean, there's always going to be some, but nothing that ever was nothing like this. Yeah,
it just seems not necessary. I mean, it wasn't just a lower, like a younger reporter. It'd be like one of the younger newspaper guys now, and then they didn't like how he did some things. He's kind of aggressive. And
once again, I'm not going to say it was unnecessary without knowing. I'd have to look at it. I want to see it. I want to see what.
I just know Riley's getting trashed.
Is he?
I mean, first of all, very few people are going to take the side of the coach.
Nope.
And those type of deals.
Nope. Take the side of the little guy. I want to see. I want to look at it.
All right. Well, great show, Steve Sipple.
Yeah, Sean, thank you.
We will be back, by the way, Saturday for our post-game show. Game will end around 6. We plan to be on around 8:30. We saying 8:30? 8:30 Husker Online post-game show. We'll break down Louisiana Tech and Nebraska, and looking forward to some 2:30 games. Those night games, I'm getting old.
Oh, thanks, Sean.
I mean, night games are rough on the
15 years older than you.
Well, just the post-game show till 2 a.m.
Yeah, that wiped my Sunday right out.
But we still had over 600 live viewers at all times last week, even at like 1 a.m. So we'll hopefully get a good number this week for post-game show. So join us here on the HuskerOnline YouTube channel. And remember, we put all of our shows on the podcast network as well. So if you want to find us, listen to us in your car ride down to Lincoln or anywhere around the world, just go to the Husker Online podcast page, anywhere you can find podcasts, or obviously get us here on the YouTube page. And most importantly, check us out on HuskerOnline.com. Steve Sipple's full post-game column will be up after the game, my final takes, grades, all the great content Husker fans have known to love for 20-plus years on HuskerOnline.com. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan, signing off here for Husker Online Headlines.